As the dust settled from the devastating effects of World War II, the world found itself divided along ideological lines. On one side stood the United States, championing democracy and capitalism, while on the other side stood the Soviet Union, advocating for communism. These conflicting ideologies ignited a battle for influence and power that played out on a global scale. Spanning from the late 1940s to the early 1990s, the Cold War was characterized by intense political, economic, and military competition, despite the absence of direct armed conflict between these two superpowers. Instead, it was a war of ideologies, espionage, and proxy conflicts fought in various regions around the world. Surrounding these global powers were allies, treaties, and organizations fighting for their respective ideology. In today's video, we'll be looking at the differences between NATO and the Warsaw Pact. NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created on the 4th of April 1949 to strengthen the military alliances between nations. The organization was created after World War II to minimize the chance of war in the new nuclear age, but to also combat aggression from the Soviet Union and other communist nations. NATO was founded by Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United States, and the United Kingdom, after they signed the North Atlantic Treaty on April 4th, 1949. Over the years, 18 more countries have joined, making the current total 30 countries. Article 3 and 4, page 1 of the North Atlantic Treaty states, in order more effectively to achieve the objectives of this treaty, the parties, separately and jointly, by means of continuous and effective self-help and mutual aid, will maintain and develop their individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. And the parties will consult together whenever, in the opinion of any of them, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. This proves that one of the organization's purposes was to protect each other when they are threatened or attacked by a country or group. This proves to us that the main purpose of NATO is to help other countries and to protect countries from threats they deem urgent. This takes us over to the next treaty organization. The Warsaw Treaty Organization, also known as the Warsaw Pact, was founded on the 14th of May 1955 and was created in response to the creation of NATO and the armament of NATO forces in West Germany. The organization strived to protect each nation from the threat of invasion, especially an invasion from NATO and the United States. With the Soviet Union, Romania, Poland, Hungary, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and Albania joining the organization after signing the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance on the 14th of May 1955. On the 1st of July 1991, the Warsaw Pact was dissolved after the fall of the Soviet Union. Article 3, page 1 of the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance states, "They shall immediately consult with one another whenever, in the opinion of any one of them, a threat of armed attack on one or more of the parties to the treaty has arisen, in order to ensure joint defense and the maintenance of peace and security." This proves that one of the Warsaw Pact's motives was to protect each other from the threat of war with other nations. This shows us that the Warsaw Pact's motives were to protect the communist nations from the threat of a war and to reinforce their own political system upon their nations. But even with all this, both organizations have much more in common than you might first assume. NATO and the Warsaw Pact both have a number of similarities. Both NATO and the Warsaw Pact serve to protect each other in the case of invasion. Both organizations want to contain the spread of each other's political ideologies and systems, and both organizations want to protect the interests of their own nations. They both started from a treaty and were created towards the start of the Cold War. Article 1, page 1 of the North Atlantic Treaty says, "The parties undertake, as set forth in the Charter of the United Nations, to settle any international dispute in which they may be involved by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered, and to refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force in any manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations." And Article 1, page 1 of the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance notes, "Contracting parties undertake, in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations Organization, to refrain in their international relations with the threat or use of force and to settle their international disputes peacefully and in such a manner as will not jeopardize international peace and security. This demonstrates to us that both organizations adhere and comply to the United Nations policies, and that they do not want to stir up any negative attention to avoid any added tension that the Cold War already had. Despite all of these similarities, both organizations have big differences. While NATO and the Warsaw Pact may both achieve similar things with their respective members, their political ideologies and beliefs are wildly different. NATO countries are democratic and capitalist, while Warsaw Pact countries were communist and totalitarian. NATO countries are democratic and let people vote and speak freely, while Warsaw Pact nations were totalitarian and oppressive. Another difference is the number of nations that were in each organization. Only 4 countries were in the Warsaw Pact in 1990, while NATO comprised of 16 countries in 1990. This proves to us that the Soviet Union and communist countries were rapidly dissolving due to revolutions and the political landscape changing. This also shows us that NATO and the Warsaw Pact were very separate, as NATO never provided much assistance to the Warsaw Pact and somewhat helped people rise up from their oppressive government. This proves to us that NATO and the Warsaw Pact were very different and that the Warsaw Pact was very unstable. With all this in mind, we can safely conclude that NATO was overall a stronger and better organization compared to the Warsaw Pact. NATO was founded with more nations and was overall more politically stable than the Warsaw Treaty Organization. Towards the end of the Cold War, due to rapid political change, communist countries were rapidly revolting and becoming more democratic. This in turn made the Warsaw Pact redundant as the Soviet Union began to collapse. This proves to us that the Warsaw Pact was founded on unstable and oppressive values, and because of this, was dissolved due to people rising up. NATO had succeeded in its goal to stop the spread of communism and unity among large nations. Even after the end of the Cold War, NATO found a new purpose of peacekeeping and protecting nations, further demonstrating how much stronger it is compared to the Warsaw Pact. In conclusion, due to the fall of communism in the Soviet Union, NATO is clearly the better organization. From peacekeeping to alliances, NATO has always been a strong organization and overall better than the Warsaw Pact.